past several months have been very busy for me, so I've decided to take a moment off of my usual videos to talk about some more of the Dark Forest characters in Paws of Stars, my rewrite series combining and changing the stories of Power of Three and Omen of the Stars. More background about exactly how this story and its characters work and came to be can be found in the 2 previous episodes I discussed similar groups of cats in. And if you'd like to read Paws of Stars itself, the first 5 books are available now in the description below, as they always are. Spoilers for the structure of the Dark Forest and a few of its members through the 5th book will be ahead, if you'd like to avoid those. Since the Dark Forest's founding, it was a barren and solitary place, filled with mists and tall trees that blotted out the sky and made it impossible to navigate, along with having constantly moving paths to keep any of the residents from finding each other. But over the course of Paws of Stars, those rules have been changing, and the world has been opening substantially. By the end of the most recent published story, Fading Light, the forest is not only a place where everyone has access to the other residents of the forest, but a thriving home with enormous power over even StarClan, which they have cut off from the clans. Left to their own devices, and with Tigerstar and Ebonystar acting as their careful, secretive leaders, the forest has become organized, compartmentalized even, to give power only to those they deem deserving of it. The Dark Forest itself now has a hidden allegiances of sorts that determines every cat's rank and the information they are allowed access to. The leaders, Tigerstar and Ebonystar, are on top, but they say they rule alongside their team of elites, some of the strongest, most influential, and most feared cats of clan history. Below the elites are the trusted, cats who didn't have enough of an effect in life to be considered worthy in death, but who are still trusted to be at meetings, to train living apprentices, and, for some of them, access to portions of the true plan, usually based on a relationship with one of the elites. The leaders, elites, and trusted all have apprentices that they chose from among the living population at the lake to add to their army's size and gain influence over the living clans without having to go down themselves. But below even them, there is another rank. The hidden. Certain cats in the Dark Forest didn't arrive because of their evil deeds, ambitions, or quarrel with StarClan or the Code. Some simply felt immense guilt over one of their actions, enough to believe that they wouldn't be in StarClan. Even more worryingly, some who were feared in life seem to have changed their minds during their time spent alone in the forest. Either way, the hidden are cats who haven't been vetted by the elites, and can't be trusted to come down on their side. They are kept to the edges of the forest, led only to interact with a single elite and have no more company than in their initial punishments. Today, I'd like to discuss one cat from each of the 3 main Dark Forest ranks. One elite, one trusted, and one hidden cat. As ever, there may be names or pieces of these cats' stories that you will recognize from what is known of the canon clan's history, but their full stories, as far as Paws of Stars is concerned, are only told now. Our representative from the mighty elites is Featherstar, a pale gray she-cat with white markings and blue eyes, who is recognizable from canon warriors, specifically Code of the Clans. Within that book, and through most of the fanon consciousness, she is known as the WingClan leader who promoted a young warrior Acorntail as her deputy after her old deputy, Pebblefur, passed away. Both Featherstar and Acorntail learned quickly that Acorntail's lack of experience with leading other cats was preventing him from doing the job well, leading to Featherstar adding a rule to the warrior code that deputies must have mentored at least one apprentice. However, another part of her canon is mentioned later. Leafpool says that she is known to have proposed another rule that would banish all non-clan-born cats. The story of why she is in the Dark Forest, and with the rank that she holds, has to do with both of these parts of her story. The majority of the warrior code was set in place in or just after the time of Dawn of the Clans, not in the stories that the Code of the Clans legends depict. Featherstar, however, is one leader who actually did propose the rule she is known for. Featherstar was a kind and trusting leader who did her best to be open and give opportunities to her clanmates whenever possible, a fact that she is scorned for both behind her back and openly in the Dark Forest. However, that trusting nature is something she now looks back on with shame. During a particularly harsh leaf bear, Featherstar allowed several stray former kitty pets and rogues to join her clan, at least for a time, but they ate all the food and wouldn't work for themselves. Featherstar considered banishing them, but decided against it as she assumed they were in the clan out of necessity. Both Featherstar and, to her dismay, Acorntail were taking less and less prey to leave more to their clanmates, leaving them especially weak. One horrible morning, Featherstar awoke to find her deputy had been killed outside of camp. His wounds were deep, yet his claws were almost entirely clean. Clearly, without enough strength on his muscles, he had been unable to fight back in time. This was all the Outsider's fault. They had stolen her prey, taken advantage of her goodwill, killed her deputy. Featherstar was sure they had murdered him themselves. This time, she didn't hesitate, banishing all of them instantly and immediately arguing for a second addition to the warrior code, with the cockiness of a cat who had already changed the rules of their society, where all non-clan-born cats would be banished, and none would ever be allowed in again. No cat should ever repeat this mistake. But the other clan leaders didn't listen. They said she was being rash, jumping to conclusions that the outsiders had killed her deputy, rather than the fox loose in their territories, and that any cat was welcome in the clans, as they were formed originally from all sorts of cats, from all sorts of places. No one was taking her side, and Featherstar wouldn't let it stand. Following her failure, she led her clan into many battles, relentlessly killing any stray that wandered onto her territory and attacking the other clans for refusing to avenge Acorntail's memory, being particularly harsh on outsiders she knew to have been invited into the other clans. She has a lot of blood on her paws, and a determination to avoid what might have been the truth of the situation, so it was no surprise to her that she appeared in the Dark Forest, or even that the leaders welcomed her in as an elite when their boundaries were broken. However, her past as a kind and devoted leader who wouldn't hurt a fly still follows her, earning her much less respect from the more single-minded elites around her, and a position as the lowest-ranked elite in the forest, even under Thistleclaw. That said, Featherstar is still an elite, a dangerous adversary who isn't to be taken lightly and isn't about to give up on her views. It's possible to forget when she's among the other elites, but her intentions reveal themselves plainly when she comes into contact with the closest cat from her past. Our representative for the hidden today is Pricklestar, a calico she-cat with bright golden eyes, who is, by a technicality, a canonical cat as well. When Acorntail realized he needed to become a mentor in order to serve as deputy, Featherstar promised to give him Pricklekit, one of Cherryfeather's kits, when they were old enough. This, however, is all that is known about Pricklekit. Their past, future, other family members, appearance, and gender were never touched upon. In my world, though, Pricklekit did go on to be mentored by Acorntail, becoming Prickletail, like her mentor, and then Featherstar's deputy, like her mentor. To an extent, Pricklestar has always felt resentment about how much Featherstar seemed to treat her as an inferior replacement for Acorntail rather than her own cat. But she loved Acorntail too, so she never spoke to these feelings publicly. Prickletail succeeded Acorntail as Featherstar's third deputy after Acorntail's murder, and they banished the outsiders, argued for the new code edition, and organized their rampaging battles together out of their shared grief. When Featherstar's ninth life slipped away, Prickletail became Pricklestar and continued on her predecessor's work, not in the raids against other clans, but still very much killing every stray to step on their territory. However, after many long seasons in the Dark Forest, she began to wonder if the other clans might have been right, and it hadn't been one of their visitors who killed Acorntail. Or, at least, maybe it wasn't all of them, because if all cats of a type should be blamed for the fault of one, after all she and Featherstar did, WindClan would be dead too. Pricklestar may be having second thoughts about her relationship with her former leader and the choices they made, but another deputy in the Dark Forest has never once wavered in her loyalty. Representing the trusted, I'd like to introduce you to Archfern, a compact, plump, spotted silver she-cat with a dark tail and dull blue-gray eyes. Despite her size and build, she is quite muscular, clearly having done all she could with her training to get past the limitations of her body. Unlike the others I have discussed today, you won't find any reference to Archfern in the canon text, but her strongest relationship is with one I distantly took from canon, Ebonystar. Archfern was one of Ebonystar's most loyal supporters, and her second deputy. Archfern hadn't had an apprentice by the time of the leader's ascension, and while it wasn't yet in the code that she had to, Ebonystar had wisdom enough to know that a trial period was needed in order to make a respected leader. So Archfern was given Dewpaw to train, and Ebonystar chose the oldest senior warrior as her deputy, who, as she had hoped, retired quite soon after. Archfern was made her second deputy and served for many moons, but upon Ebonystar's death, the clans wouldn't let Archfern be made the next leader of ThunderClan. She did all she could to fight back, even sneaking off to the Moonstone on her own, but StarClan denied her, and eventually her medicine cat and even some of her own clanmates turned on her, saying she and her former leader were traitors to the warrior code for starting and continuing this war. Getting desperate, she ordered the cats on her side to join her in a battle for Sunning Rocks, the land Ebonystar claimed. But with the might of all three other clans against her small patrol, Archfern was slain, leaving ThunderClan to choose their own leader. Archfern wanted nothing more than to see Ebony Star, and followed her to the Dark Forest without even knowing how. Yet, until the forest was merged, she hadn't even seen a hint of her best friend. Now that they are together again, who's to say what is possible? The Dark Forest is a wide and varied expanse with cats from all parts of history who all have different motives in their lives and deaths. Unifying them all under any purpose would be a difficult task, but a few cats have decided it is something they are capable of. I hope you enjoyed learning more about these three in particular, but I expect that I'll revisit the Paws of Stars world again in future videos as well. One day, far in the future, I will make a longer and more detailed full rundown of what Paws of Stars is and how I have made it. But until that day comes, I would like to stick to smaller concept videos. I have plenty more Dark Forest cats to explore, but if there's anything else you'd like me to discuss, feel free to leave it in the comments, and I might just make a video on it. Thank you for watching, as always. I do hope people enjoy the story I'm creating.